Hey adventurers, so today is going to be another book review. This is going to be for Legion, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds by Brandon Sanderson. So this is a sci-fi mystery novellas. So it's a collection of 3 novellas that he wrote, and he just compiled them into a single volume rather than the 3 individual novellas. Legion, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds is one of Brandon Sanderson's attempts to tell a more science fiction story. The point of these stories is not really the sci-fi aspects, but rather the exploration of our main character and his mind. And that's really what makes this book so unique. There are some scientific aspect or science fiction aspects, but it's actually more like a modern fiction mystery detective story type thing rather than a actual science fiction novel, although there definitely are some science fiction aspects to that. So it's kind of like a modern science fiction novel, I guess. Kind of something like that. Before I get on into this review, though, I just quickly like to say welcome to an Erudite adventure. I'm T. If you're liking what you're seeing from us, please like, comment, and subscribe. So this book is 3 novellas that each tell an individual story, but that tie together and build upon themselves to tell actually an overarching story about Stephen, our main character, and how his mind functions. Very simply, Stephen Leeds creates mental personalities as a means of processing information. He then goes and attempts to solve mysteries using the information that these aspects have. Legion, the first of the stories, has him involved in a mystery with a camera that can take pictures of the past. The villain is attempting to use it to prove or disprove the resurrection of Jesus Christ, thereby causing societal collapse. It's a concept that doesn't quite make sense, but actually works super well in execution, and something that I found very fascinating to think about and to dwell on. I'm not worried about what the answer is that he comes up with, because I know that Brandon Sanderson is going to treat that premise correctly. But the idea of being able to look into the past is something that fascinates me. Skin Deep is the second of the 2 novellas, or of the 3 novellas, and uses biotechnology and biological coding as a way to store information. This is literally just gene manipulation, essentially, or coding information into our DNA. DNA has a ton of information in it as it is, and so this is literally just using that and manipulating it to store information, essentially. Obviously, there is massive potential for insidious control and spread of information with this as well. Just lots of implications that has to do with as well. This is a concept that makes a lot more sense to me, and is to me far more terrifying than the first story with the camera looking into the past. But I'm not sure that the execution is quite as strong, which is kind of interesting. The idea is more scientifically sound, clearly, but it is also not as well executed, in my opinion. It's possibly my least favorite of the 3 stories. There's definitely some good things about it, but probably my least favorite of the 3. Lies of the Beholder is our final story, and deals with death and loss and artificial realities as a means of overriding free will. And that's something that is terrifying, is the removal of free will from any society. And it's a very pertinent conversation in a lot of ways, and just very interesting to me to think about, and definitely and probably the most scary to me. This is definitely the most harrowing of the 3, and likely the best of the 3. And it most definitely is the most powerful of the 3 novellas. Sanderson does an excellent job of not only tying up the series, but also connecting the previous stories into it as a cohesive narrative, and bringing us back full circle. And that's kind of when you listen to him, or I think it's in the introduction of the bind up of the collection, or whatever you want to call it, he talks about why he wrote these other books. He wrote the first one and just really liked the character, really found a lot of interesting stuff in the writing of that first story, and he couldn't get that out of his mind, and so he eventually decided to come back and write another one. And again, he was just thinking about it and was like, okay, I need to write this third one that can wrap up this whole story. And so he very intentionally wrote that third one as a conclusion and as a wrap up for the trilogy as a whole. But also then, with that intention in mind, he was able to pull in pieces from the previous 2 stories in order to really make it all tie together nicely. And as I said here, in bringing us back full circle. When I started this, I was looking for an audiobook, as I often end up doing. I just scroll through my library seeing what's available, and I randomly decided to start this because it was available. I hit play and immediately thought, why did I start this? I'm tired. I don't want to read any more Sanderson at the moment. I don't really want to read another Sanderson right now. But I let it play a bit since I really had nothing else to listen to at the moment, and before I'd realized it, I was actually engaged and intrigued with it. It's not specifically something I was expecting to enjoy a ton, but I ended up appreciating it far more than I expected to, and that's something that I really like, that I can go into a book, and even if I'm like, I'm burnt out on Sanderson, I don't want to read more Sanderson, I go into it and I come out of it saying, okay, that was worth my time. And so yeah, definitely for me, Legion was worth my time. It's not my favorite Sanderson by any means. It's not my favorite sci-fi by any means, but there is enough in it that made me invested in the story that was being told, and in the construction of the story of the trilogy, that made me say, okay, yes, this is worth my time to read and to learn, see what Sanderson is doing here. I've mentioned before how I like endings and the wrappings up of stories, and being able to get that from Sanderson after the previous book by him, which I had read, which was Wind and Truth, just not wrapping up anything and just kind of like chopping itself off at the end, and you're like, well, I guess we're done with this story. That was really, it was really abrupt, that ending, and I didn't care for it. And so seeing Sanderson actually have somewhat of an ending where you get some time to some falling action, you get some time to get yourself acquainted with this new world, and just see how things are now after the events of the story. That's something that I really appreciated seeing as well. It was also nice because after Wind and Truth, I had my trust and my faith in his ability to have an ending shaken quite soundly, and that's unfortunate, very unfortunate for sure. But reading this one really helped me kind of reset. And I know it's a little bit earlier, I don't know exactly when all three of the stories were written. They're not exactly my style, I don't love them, but there was, like I mentioned already, there's definitely enough stuff in them that was worth my time reading, that I enjoyed it. This is in no way a top book for me, but there was enough to enjoy, and I do like seeing Sanderson play with concepts in genres that he doesn't usually. Overall, it's one where I'm glad I ended up reading it, though I'm not really terribly likely to read it again. Maybe that first story, the I guess it's just called Legion, maybe that one I might reread again at some point, because I have a little bit of a draw to go see how he constructed that story once again. But it's not going to be anytime soon. I don't really need to read them, but that's okay. I don't need to read it right now, and I'm definitely not planning on it. I know there's a lot of conversation in this book regarding mental health and just the representation, which is something that Sanderson likes to do in his stories. So there's absolutely that aspect of the story, and I don't feel remotely qualified to talk on that. I also just didn't read it for that portion at all. I read it for the story that was being told, and so I'm not going to comment on that. If you want a better commentary on that, I would recommend going and watching Tori's video from Tori Talks, and her review of this story, this Legion, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds, because she goes into that a little bit and why it impressed her what Sanderson was doing with it. So that's, if you want to know more about that, I would point you to her video as well. Anyways, that is my review of Legion, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds by Brandon Sanderson. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and have our social medias linked in the description down below. We'll see you guys again soon. Stay warm.